How can clients benefit from looking at brain imaging during COVID? In the last video, I spoke about how brain imaging helps clinicians during COVID. I talked about COVID placing an additional demand on us for optimizing our care time. And I talked about brain imaging used by clinicians to optimize clinical reasoning. More specifically, to start generating insights into what sort of problems the person has. So initial assessment is not just about initial contact, it's also about starting to assess more carefully areas that might be problematic for the person. In this video, I want to talk with you about how clients can benefit from brain imaging. And for this, I want to tell you a story. It's about a client I had about more than 20 years ago, actually. It was when I was working in the UK. I was working in a hospital. I had a neurological ward and I had a general ward. And this lady, she was in her 50s. She was in the general ward and she was convinced that she's got cancer and that she's going to die. So she came to hospital and she had every investigation under the sun. She was scanned head to toes. Absolutely everything was checked and no cancer was found. I was given the job of mobilizing her and getting her ready to go home, which I did. And she went home. But see, in her head, she was still convinced she's got cancer, which therefore meant that she went to bed and didn't get out of bed much at all. She ended up developing pressure sores and those pressure sores got infected. The infection got to her blood. She had septicemia. And by the time she arrived back at the hospital, it was too late. And that case left a really strong impression on me as a clinician, because it was the first time that I really understood that what the client thinks affects their actions, to the degree that if this lady thought she had cancer and that she's going to die, she was going to die just because of the actions she took. It also made me realize that if I can't get with my client on exactly the same page, if I can't understand their thinking or they can't understand my thinking, if we can't get into some common grounds, my treatment is not going to be effective at all. And that was a complete contrast to a case that I saw recently of a clinician who contacted me here in Australia. She wanted me to have a look at her brain scans with her. She had some symptoms that happened overnight and resolved by the morning. She had a whole lot of investigations. She had brain scans. Everything came back as normal, but she wanted to look at the brain scans with me. I remember thinking, I wonder why she wants to look at the brain scans with me. After all, it's all normal. There isn't much there for her to see. But we met and we had a look at her scans. She had MRI scans, so we went through all the various sequences. I explained what each sequence is, what it shows. We looked at her brain, how it looked at each sequence and therefore what it meant. And we had a really good conversation. And then the conversation went on to talk about history, family history, and there were certain elements of genetics that became apparent. And after that conversation, she then proceeded to investigate a genetics element or genetic element that could have impacted on her symptoms. So that case was very different because she really wanted to understand what's going on. She really wanted to have an ownership, responsibility, understanding of what's going on in her brain. Which brings me to the point I wanted to make in here of how you can use brain imaging for your clients. When you as a clinician look at brain images, you use information from brain imaging to shape your assessment and treatment, to give it direction, more specific direction, and hopefully also to educate your clients. But there is a word of caution there. Not all clients like looking at their brain scans. Some people find it intimidating. Some people find it overwhelming looking at the lesion on their brain or the extent of the lesion of the brain on the brain. So you need to respect that and know that it's not for everybody. But if your client is interested in looking at brain scans and understand what's going on in their brain, then that moves you and your client to work as a team. Because now because they understand what's going on, they can set goals that are more realistic. They can help you form a treatment plan that will be meaningful to them and move them towards where they want to be, and understand that they have to set realistic goals. It also helps you, or them actually, evaluate and progress. So if they understand what's going on and they understand what the challenges are, they can also evaluate and understand why certain things are working or not working, or if something is working well, even do more or challenge themselves a little bit more. Which brings me to the point that when you discuss brain imaging with your clients, you give them deep insight into their problem and also ownership. Ownership of the problem, ownership of whatever is required to be done. If they understand what's going on, if they understand why they're getting certain problems and how they can address it, how they can treat it, then they'll be really motivated and they'll be on the same page as you. And in this environment of COVID, when you need to optimize your care, a client who has more insight and more motivation will help you provide optimal care, even better care. To summarize all of that, when you look with your clients at their brain scans, you're giving them knowledge. You're giving them the power and the motivation to change where they're at, a direction, a path of how to get there. And that is the great thing about sharing brain images with your clients, particularly when there's additional requirements or demands on your time, such as COVID. Let me know how you use brain images during COVID, and I look forward to hearing from you.